As this story continues to develop, we now welcome in Brenda Tracy, nationally known activist against domestic violence and founder of SetTheExpectation.org. Brenda, first of all, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to get your perspective when you heard what Courtney Smith had to say. What was your initial reaction to her story?
You know, the initial reaction when I first started hearing about the story, I was obviously upset. But yesterday I watched her video and I was at the airport. I was on my way to Michigan and I watched the video and I actually started to cry at the airport. I had to put a hat on because it was heartbreaking for me. At that moment, I wasn't angry. I was hurt by how many people had failed her and what she had gone through. And it's so wrong and it's so hurtful, and she's not the only one. There's so many survivors going through this. So it was deeply saddening for me.
Now, Courtney talked to me specifically about her decision not to press charges. She used the word pressured, that she felt pressured by people that she knew and was very close to. Can you speak? I was just so struck when I was talking to her about her perspective on everything and how much she seems to know about the cycle of domestic violence. Can you speak to all of us who haven't experienced something like that about the victim's perspective and what they think about when they're confronted with a decision about whether to tell people or to go public?
Right. Well, I think the first thing we should talk about is that victims are the experts in this, right? I mean, we need to start talking to more victims about their experience so we can truly understand what these things are about. I think there's so many misunderstandings about the dynamics of sexual assault and domestic violence that we really need to start talking to survivors. So yeah, she knows a lot, but reporting and making decisions in these situations is really difficult. I mean, you have people blaming you, a lot of victim blaming, right? Why don't you just leave? Why are you staying? And then people saying, you know, well, what about him? You're going to hurt him and his life. He could lose his job. So you have family members, friends, community people who aren't really supporting you. And it feels like they're almost kind of turning on you, right? They care more about him than you. You have to think about finances. You have to think about your livelihood. In many of these situations, this person is dependent on the other person for income. And society tends to make the victim into the perpetrator. So if she does report or she does take action, then she's the bad person. Society loves to turn the victim into the perpetrator and the perpetrator into the victim. And we're already seeing that. I'm seeing it all over my timeline that people are blaming her and placing responsibility on her, and they're feeling bad for Zach and what he's going through. So this is a very normal dynamic that happens, and it's something that prevents survivors from wanting to come forward, including the backlash, right? Look what she's going through now that she's come forward.
Absolutely. And of course, the story isn't just about the domestic violence that she experienced. It is also, you know, has this college football element to it. And that's something that you know a lot about. I know that you speak on campuses in 2 football programs. In your mind, what needs to change in this college football world?
I think a lot of education needs to happen, but I also think that we need to start setting the expectation. We need to start kind of drawing the line in the sand around behavior. We need to start, for athletes, we need to start attaching eligibility to behavior. For the staff, we need to start signing out and like lining it out in contracts. If you know about things and you cover up things and you ignore things, then you're going to lose your job. We need to start having good policies, strong policies. We need to start holding people accountable. People need to be transparent, and we need to follow through. If we're going to say, if you ignore and you don't do certain things, then you're going to lose your job or you're going to lose your eligibility, then we need to follow through on those things. So really, for me, a lot of it is about setting the expectation, drawing the line in the sand and holding firm on it. And not only that, but a lot of education. We need to start educating people on the dynamics of sexual assault and domestic violence. It's not enough to have, you know, a saying on the wall that you're going to respect women. What does that look like? What does that mean? And understanding the dynamics of victim blaming and other things that go on. We need a lot of education also.
Well, speaking of all the things that you just said, setting the expectation, education, consequences, Urban Meyer was placed on administrative leave on Wednesday after this story broke. From what you know about the story. In your mind, do you think it would be appropriate for him to return to this job?
I absolutely think that if Urban Meyer knew about these incidents, then he should not return to his job. I also understand that last April in his contract, it said that if he knew about things and didn't report, then he was to lose his job. So by contract and by the expectation that Ohio State has set, if this is all true, then he should not be returning to his job.
Well, Brenda, we so much appreciate the work that you are doing out there, and thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and please pass along to Courtney that I think she's amazing and she's a hero, and I know that what she's doing is hard, but she's helping so many other people.
I will do that.